Imagine a classroom where learning isn't about chasing numbers, but about truly understanding where a student's progress is measured by growth, not a grade. What if we stop labeling potential with letters and start nurturing it with words? Honorable judge, esteemed opposition, and fellow proposition. We on the proposition strongly stand and propose the motion this House would ban grades and replace them with written feedback. Firstly, I would like to start with our policy. The government will abolish traditional letter or numerical grades for all tests in schools nationwide. Additionally, these written feedbacks should include both strengths and weaknesses of students and spaces for improvement. They will receive written feedback every half term for consistency. We as a government will start implementing from primary school and all the way up all schools. Not only will the students receive feedback in order for these feedbacks to be essential and useful, we will provide training for teachers to teach them how to write effectively, but also motivational feedback. Now I'd like to start with my first substantive point, which is about giving more personalized feedback. A lot of students are pressurized by their parents that they must achieve a certain grade, and all they are reaching for is a number to satisfy their parents. Is that real learning? No, that's chasing after numbers. These students are not focused on understanding the concept that's being taught, but to follow the expectations of a rubric. This can create anxiety and limit their motivation to understand concepts. When feedback is written and individualized, students receive guidance tailored to their strengths and weaknesses, helping them focus on mastering a subject rather than just satisfying a rubric and their parents. Imagine a student receives a low grade and feels stressed about disappointing their parents who expect them to get 100%. The number alone doesn't help them understand what to improve, but in a classroom using written feedback, the students instead get a specific advice on what worked well and what needs more practice. My second substantive point is that written feedback encourages real learning. Written feedback encourages real learning by transforming assessment into an ongoing conversation between the teacher and the student rather than a final verdict. Instead of simply receiving a grade, students get personalized comments that help them reflect on their work and understand exactly where they went wrong or succeeded. This reflection builds self awareness, making students more mindful of their learning processes. It also motivates them to actively improve, leading them to a growth mindset where they see challenges as opportunities to learn rather than threats to their standing. Over time, this continuous feedback loop develops critical thinking and problem solving skills. As a student engage deeply with the material and take ownership of their improvement rather than passively accepting results defined by arbitrary numbers. A student receives a grade and feels confused about what to improve. With written feedback, they get clear, specific advice that helps them understand their mistakes and take steps to improve. This turns assessment into a learning opportunity, not just a judgment. In conclusion, replacing grades with written feedback transforms assessment into a tool that actively supports student growth. Written feedback promotes reflection, encourages self improvement, and helps students develop a deeper understanding for their learning. Ultimately, this approach fosters motivation and confidence, leading them to a better long-term education outcomes than the traditional grading system. This is why we're proud to propose. Thank you very much.
I got three rebuttal to the previous speaker. Firstly, they said that students will be pressured by their parents. Yes, that might happen, but we believe that by that, students will have more willing to willing and wanting to win, and they will have willing to get better, to make their parents proud or to not be scolded. Secondly, they said that written feedback can will make students grow and have deeper understanding of learning. Yes, we also think like that, and we believe that we are arguing that this motion is about this debate is not about grade versus written feedback. We believe that this we are arguing about that grade and having written feedback is beneficial than just having written feedback. Moving on, also they said that encourage and motivates, but however we believe however it is not exclusive and is not explained and explained in the first and second argument. And moving on to my introduction, like I said, this debate is not about grade versus written feedback. We believe that this grade is about having only written feedback versus having grade and written feedback. we also believe that written feedback gives only thing that we believe that only having written feedback gives only how to improve, not showing exact level of students level and not showing grade. Also, I want to ask, in which cases do we need grades? Firstly, we think in university and society, in society we need grades, and I'll explain it more in our first and second argument. Moving on to my first argument, which is justification and role of education. In our first analysis, students can know their level by not just but by not us not banning, and they can know the students can know, and also teachers can know what students level is, and also by written feedback students can know how to improve their levels and improvement. Moving on to my second analysis, which is competition. We believe that in nowadays school have many competition by having tests or having grades, so we believe that students who are bad at studying will have willing to win and willing to get better, showing making their grade improve and also their skill improve by also reframing themselves with written feedback. Also, moving on to my third argument, which is prepare for future, that they're likely to be more prepared and build identity. They can be fit into a rule of ranking in the society. For example, in normal company, there is different levels in different levels, and they're all treated differently. Same as school, students who are good at studying gets more treated better, and bad students treated bad. And by that, students can be more fit into the society in the future, making it showing the education's role in school. Moving on to my second argument, essential benefit. Competition's essential benefit. Students who are bad at studying will have willing and wanting to win, be better than smarter than the students who are good at studying, who gets treated well. Then we believe that students will get highly developed and further developed by written feedback. And B, we are using both, and it is much more beneficial than just having written feedback, because students can know how much they're good at and how much they're good at in subject and how to improve. So far, to propose.
Honorable judges, esteemed opposition, and fellow teammates, have you ever studied really hard for a test only to get back a grade that made you feel like a failure? Maybe you got a C or a D, and suddenly all that effort didn't seem to matter anymore. But does that one letter or number really show how much you've learned or how hard you've tried? Good morning, I'm the second speaker of Side Proposition, and I'm here to further explain our arguments to you. Before I begin, I would like to begin with a few rebuttals. Firstly, side opposition said that grades provide a simple universal standard of how they are performing. Grades may seem simple, but they often hide inconsistencies and fail to reflect a student's real understanding. Feedback can be structured with clear criteria, making it both fair and personalized, and this can show exactly what a student did well and what they need to work on, which grades alone cannot do. They also said that grades are necessary for universities and future decisions. However, grades only show a snapshot of the performance. They don't show how a student learns, improves, or overcomes challenges. Written feedback combined with portfolios or progress reports gives universities a full picture of the student's skills and potential. Students who grow and persist are often more successful than those who just get higher marks. They also said that grades motivate students to work harder and grades create motivation. However, students work for a number, not understanding. Feedback, on the other hand, builds centric motivation. When students, I'll take it after I finish, okay? When students see the progress and know exactly how to improve, they are more motivated to learn for themselves and not just to get a high score. And I would also like to point out, per our policy, we already said that the written feedback will be very open and honest, and nothing would be sugar-coated. Teachers will be obligated to be giving feedback to tell students how they're performing, and the opposition has missed our framing completely. Now I would like to begin my speech, but I will take your rebuttal.
We never said that we won't have a written feedback. We only said that we will have both.
Okay, so this is like they're kind of too like but like if we just stick to only
I'm so sorry. Your network is cutting out, and I paused your timer at the 2-minute mark. Hello, sorry to interrupt. Your network cut right after the POI
Okay.
concluded, so I did not hear the response to the POI. My
Okay.
timer says 2 minutes. So
Okay.
could you restart your speech from the moment the POI concluded?
Okay. Okay, so my response was that although grades may seem objective, they often fail to reflect the true understanding, which is why I think we should just stick to feedback with structured, clear criteria because it's more informative and fair and it shows exactly where students succeed or struggle. Now I would like to begin with my speech. My first point is how well-written feedback supports mental health. Grades create pressure and a lot of it. Many students stay up late, stress over exams, and even cry when they don't get the marks they expected. Why? Because grades make us feel like our worth is based on a letter or a number. Getting a low grade can make students feel like they failed, even if they tried their best. Written feedback changes that, but instead of saying you got a C, a teacher can say you have strong ideas, but your essay would be even better if you explained your examples more clearly in this way. This feels more helpful and less hurtful, and it tells a student that what they can do next time instead of labeling their efforts not good enough. When students receive thoughtful comments, they feel supported um, rather than judged, and it helps them see mistakes as part of their learning, not as proof that they're bad at something. This reduces anxiety and builds confidence, and a classroom should be a safe space where they can learn and not a competition about who gets the highest score. My second point is about how written feedback builds a growth mindset. Grades often make students think in black and white because you're either smart or you're not. But that's not how learning works. Everyone learns at their own pace because written feedback helps built a growth mindset. The belief that you can always get better with effort and practice. When teachers give comments like you've improved in your structure and you keep working on your vocabulary, students can learn that progress is what truly matters. They can see improvement by step, and which makes them feel proud and motivated to keep going. This kind of mindset encourages persistence instead of giving up after a bad grade. Students want to fix their mistake and try again, and they start to see challenges as opportunities. So, in conclusion, why should we ban grades but when we can replace them with written feedback? Because grades cause unnecessary stress and competition, and because feedback helps students grow instead of feeling judged, and also because education systems should care about learning and not just measuring. So for all these reasons, we have never been practical.
Before stating our third argument, I would like to state 3 points of rebuttal to the previous speaker. First, they said that grades limit understanding. However, we believe that the rubrics and assessments are actually designed to check if the students understand the complex concepts. So, we believe that these kinds of assessments can also help cultivate an understanding. Second, they said that students can get personalized and tailored feedback. They said it was a unique benefit when only using written feedback. However, our stance is that we would use both methods, written feedback and grades. So during written feedback, teachers suggest areas for improvement and their strengths, and they can grow through tailored feedback. And through grades, they promote a sense of competition and show where their level is amongst the peers. When banning grades, this benefit disappears. Third, they said that grades create anxiety. However, we believe that giving grades create a sense of growth mindset because they can know where their position is, and we believe that since students are actually paying a lot of attention to how others perform and are interested in that, we believe through this experience we believe that they can be actually motivated to study harder and become the best in class. Now, moving on to our third argument on how this overburdens universities and teachers. First, the characteristics of universities is that they are the highest level of education that can equip students with knowledge about their major. As a result, they want students who are capable of understanding the lectures. However, the nature of written feedback is that they are subjective and based on the teacher's opinion. Then, the university can struggle to find whether if the feedback
is actually credible and fair. So we believe that the university has to do much more to check if the student is truly capable. Now, moving on to a second level of analysis on how it also overburdens teachers. When giving mean feedback, the teachers have to write everything with words, and the feedback is solely based on their criteria. However, grades are actually given using scores such as test scores, and we believe that the process is much more efficient because the teachers can give the grades immediately based on how well they performed in an assessment. We believe that the grading process has to be efficient because actually the students have to immediately know whether their grades for their performance on an assessment so they can improve better for their next assessment. And we believe that improvement takes a lot of time and energy, so there should be a long term for them to prepare. Also, when giving grades, they can use a universal criteria, so we believe that the grades are actually more fair and equitable. Therefore, we're proud to propose.
Judges, imagine a student who studies day and night not to learn, not to grow, but just to simply chase a number. While 95 is excellent at A, 75 feels like a failure for many people. While both grades were efforts of resilience and learning, grades nowadays have turned learning into a competition and not just a journey that we can achieve skills from. Honorable judges, opposition, and teammates, today as a government side and the last speaker, we believe it's time to end this toxic culture. We would ban grades and replace them with written feedback, which is an excellent system that values growth over judgment and provides a full picture of the student. Many people have the misconception of learning, which is just to achieve good grades, and that's how you get into good schools and great companies. However, it's not. It's a learning process that is the most important, and I'll be expanding this in my speech. Before I like to start, I'd first like to provide some rebuttals. First of all, the opposition side has repetitively mentioned that this motion is not about grades or written feedback. It's just about, their side is to combine both of them. However, this motion believes strengthens in the word ban. Ban means that we remove grade completely, and on our side we're talking about how we should reuse written feedback. However, on your side you should be talking about how we shouldn't ban these grades and use these grades instead. And even if on your case, having both defeats the purpose, because having both grades and written feedback sounds nice in theory, but in reality, grades always dominate because they're the actual numbers that students have knowledge about. And they wouldn't look at the feedback if they have grades, and they would just compare it to others. Secondly, they also mentioned that improvement takes a lot of time. However, that's how students learn. By improving themselves over and over again, gaining more feedback at a time, they can learn from the process and earn multiple skills. Extending on my previous speaker's point, they mentioned about critical thinking, self-improvement, and great mindset. We can put them all together, and we can not only reach the opposition goal of a good grade, as students are actually willing to do their work, as we're providing motivation. And they're also able to focus on studying during this process, and they're able to learn to analyze the feedback and put it into real-life situation. A life hack that can be essential, whether it is in jobs that you have to write summaries after meetings, or maybe even in sports teams where you can assess yourself after a game with all the stats you have. While opposition has also mentioned that students can be prepared for future or competitive rankings in job, we on our side teach them these skills so that they can overcome the competitive rankings to achieve more and better results onward in life. As my previous speaker has mentioned, with all these great points, we are able to actually teach these students on how to improve their skills that can overcome other societal problems and not just overcoming simple grades in school, because grades are just subjective, and it could also depend on a lot of teachers, especially in subjects like English. Therefore, finally, in our policy, we're able to teach students the crucial life skills, like how to reflect from the written feedback, how to improve our weaknesses, while the opposing side only provides a so-called competitive environment, which isn't even suitable for everyone, because everybody, some people really like competitive environments, while others, they don't take competitive environments seriously. They just slack down and do nothing. Judges, if we want you to take away one thing from this speech, it'd be that our policy overrides opposition because in our way, we teach students skills, not just how to achieve good grades, but actual skills that can be helpful in many other occasions.
Before I move on to the two clashes I've made for this debate, firstly, two things to point out. Firstly, their arguments, or three arguments, are basically the same. Firstly, because they said that their arguments are that it's personalized learning, not only to satisfy a rubric, and also they said after that it will encourage learning. However, in encouraging learning, they only talked about how students get personalized learning, which is basically the same, and also they never provided mechanisms and analysis about how it will encourage learning, which I will talk more about in my second class. A few rebuttals to the previous speaker. Firstly, they said that grades create a toxic competition. However, this problem of toxic comparison will not be solved simply by banning grades. We have to solve the fundamental problem of not focusing on themselves. The second rebuttal is that they said that grades will be dominant even when we mix these two solutions. However, because grades only appear like, for example, once a half term, like they stated. However, there is this build-up where they will still be learning, and they will still be learning in class where the grades aren't visible yet. So even in class, they will not be completely sure about their grades, which means that they will still have the motivation, which makes their logic doesn't make sense. Moving on to our two clashes. Our first clash is that which world fulfills the role of education. They said that, and we said that it will prepare for them in the future. Firstly, because social systems are currently in this based on this grading system, so it will be better for these children and these students to be prepared for the future. Also, it's easy to shape children's worldview. Also, thirdly, it might disrupt the class because it's hard to pinpoint the class, which means that it doesn't fulfill the role of education where everybody gets a fair education. So also they said that it has personalized learning, which can satisfy their proper learning, and they can learn properly and they can improve. However, because these students are, as I'm going to state in my second class, these students will get motivation. These students will also get personalized learning in class and practically every day, because these students will still feel that firstly that there's competition and whatnot. So we believe that we proved how we'll prove the role of education. We went to our second class. They said that it motivates students more because these students get personalized learning. These students can understand what they're bad at and then and know what they have to improve. However, if these students can if these teachers give personalized written feedback, these students might not be able to understand clearly because it's not in a proper numbered or lettered grade, because they have because they're children, they're irrational, they have lack of understanding. These students will not be able to understand. Therefore, we take this class home. Thank you.
First, I will discuss the burdens for each team. Our burden of proof was to prove the harms when banning grades, and we constantly mentioned that motivation would be discouraged and the students cannot find out their level and therefore cannot improve. However, the opponent's burden of proof was to prove to us that the unique harms of grades and why we can't balance both methods of written feedback and grades. They fail to recognize how grades create toxic competition and how the schools would still be able to fulfill their role of education, which is teaching students basic knowledge, even though there aren't actually grades. Also, they simply assumed that students would fall into despair and constantly create toxic comparisons between themselves and grades with dominant, even though both methods are balanced. However, we believe that students are most willing to improve. They would actually look at the written feedback, which provides tailored feedback on the areas for growth and their strengths, and also look at the grades to find out their level amongst the peers. So we believe that grades will not continue to dominate as they assumed, and therefore our word would be more successful. Now, lastly, we would like to do a word comparison. In our word, students can know their level amongst the peers while also looking at the written feedback to find out their areas for strength and improvement. However, inside governments, well, the students can simply look at the subjective written feedback and not find out their level amongst the peers, and therefore they cannot improve or grow. Therefore, we are proud to oppose.
Ladies and gentlemen, throughout this debate, our team has shown that banning grades and replacing them with written feedback creates a healthier, fairer, and more effective learning environment. First, we argue that written feedback supports mental health and grades cause stress, competition, and self-doubt. Written feedback removes the pressure, helping students focus on learning rather than fearing failure. Our classroom should inspire confidence and not anxiety. And we as proposition feel like written feedback truly does that. Second, we proved that feedback builds a growth mindset. Grades divide students into smart or not smart, but feedback shows everyone that improvement is always possible. It teaches students to see mistakes as chances to grow, which builds resilience and motivation. Third, our team highlighted how feedback encourages learning growth and persistence instead of giving up after a bad mark. Students learn to take feedback, apply it, and try again, and that's how the real learning happens, through the effort, and not by chasing the numbers. Finally, we showed that written feedback is more personalized, and it gives every student specific guidance that grades alone can never provide. It treats students as individuals and not as statistics. The opposition claimed that grades are simple, efficient, and motivate students, but simplicity doesn't mean effectiveness. Written feedback may take more time, but it produces real results, calmer students, and better understanding, as well as a stronger motivation. Grades push competition, and feedback builds improvement, which is why our arguments stand stronger and show real care for students' well-being and learning. So for all these reasons, the proposition clearly